right. So hopefully I have enough battery life to get through this. Um, so we mixed our bread this morning, mixed our flour and our starter, our water. Then we waited. And then we added our salt, mixed it again, and now we've waited about a half an hour. Um, and we're going to give it our first folds. So why do we give it folds? Everyone has seen that the no knead bread, um, which is basically you mix it together and then wait for it to proof and then you throw it in the oven. And that works. It makes bread a little more focaccia like, I think. Um, so we give it folds to A, make more gluten, and B, develop the gluten that is already there. So we talked about this last time, but for those of you, it's your first one, we'll be repeating. Gluten is made of two different proteins, and with the addition of water, those proteins come together to form gluten. So you have glidian, I don't know how they're pronounced. Someone can tell me later, or I'll look it up. But those two proteins combine to form gluten. And proteins are generally all bound up. So what we're trying to do is slowly stretch them out so that they, along with the starches, form sort of matrix to trap the gases released by the yeast. So you can do this the way you traditionally make bread, which is kneading. If you remember, that's how I made bread when I was a kid. You take your dough and you knead it, knead it, knead it. That works better for something with a lower hydration. This dough might be a little bit too wet to do that easily with. You still could. That's one way of doing it. The other way is when you're making sourdough, because the yeast takes so much longer to mature, because it is a wild yeast strain. It's not commercial yeast that's bred for its productivity and robustness. It takes a little bit longer, so we have about 5-6 hours from mixing to where it's ready to shape. So we can develop that gluten slowly instead of having to do it quickly. Now, if you had a big mixer, you could do that as well. And nothing's wrong. There's a million different ways to skin this cat. So this is just one way of doing it. But you could manually knead it. You could sit there and you could push it in and do that. If you're using commercial yeast, you have to. You either have to do it with the mixer or that because you don't get that much time. You know, the time between mixing with commercial yeast and before it's overproofed is incredibly short, depending on temperature of water, anywhere from 45 minutes to a couple hours. So, but we have hours, so we'll do it nice and slow, not a lot of work, not a lot of stress, you don't have to sweat over it. So all we're going to do is, let's see, first thing we'll do, get a second bowl to put it into. This just makes it easier to go out. A little bit of oil in there. This will just make your bread easier to pop out later. If you leave it in a crusty bowl, it'll kind of stick to that and whatever. You can, nothing wrong with that. But if you got another bowl, a little oil, butter, doesn't matter what kind of oil, olive oil works great. It's fairly little flavor. You're not adding anything to it. And then, let's do our folds. Get your hands moist, not dripping with water. You don't want to be adding water at this point. Reach in, lift up, out, and flop it down. Turn it to the next corner of your circle, up, out. Feel like you're sticking too much? Get a little bit of water. Okay, let's do our last corner. Up and out. All right. Now, if you feel like you could use a little bit more, feel free. Your job as the baker is to know how much stretch it needs. You don't want to be ripping it apart. If you do too much, you're doing it bad. It's like taking a cotton ball and trying to separate out all of those strands by doing this. You want to do this slowly and then let it rest and then do this. Part of that is the makeup of the two proteins that form gluten. One of them provides elasticity, and then the other one provides one of them provides stretch, and the other one provides elasticity, the ability to bounce back. So one of them lets it stretch, then the other one wants to bounce back. So you stretch it, and then you have to let it rest so that the one that wants to bounce back relaxes, and then you can stretch it a little bit more. So both of those help make bread, but they also work against each other a little bit. So that's your job as well, is to balance that. So when you see the bread and you say, okay, I folded it and I feel like now I'm just ripping it, stop. So I feel like, especially at the very beginning, you can do a little bit more. So we'll give it another little thing. And now at this point, we'll transfer it into our clean bowl. So just kind of pick it up. Okay. Kind of fold it however you want. And that looks pretty good. I might give it a little like pick up and hang. You see how one side gets underneath, and then I'll go to the other. See how it's kind of hanging down and fold it underneath. Now we've got a nice, put a little lid on it, and we're good. Do that every roughly half an hour. Do it 4 or 5 times. There's no hard and true way. Again, you can do it never and you'd still get bread. But best practice is, keep on practicing, see what you like. But I'll recommend 4 to 5 turns just like that. Be a little gentler as you get into your 4th and 5th one. As you begin, because that's going to be a couple hours in, the yeast is going to begin. It's going to saturate the dough with CO2. It's going to begin forming all of those little bubbles. You want to be gentler with that if you're trying to make the bread that we are. So we're trying to make kind of a country bread. The bread, most of you know from me, is what we're making. It's kind of a holy, airy, light bread. So we need to be careful. We want to trap as many of those gases. We're not looking for like sandwich bread, something with a really, really tight crumb. If you want to do that, you can be a little bit less careful at that point. So before I go, questions? So anything you want to ask now? So you're going to be in charge. We're going to come back when it's proved. So if you got any questions about that, if you're making bread right now, before I go, give me a second. All right. Enjoy bread. Have fun with the folds. Give it those 4 or 5 folds in the next, every half an hour, roughly. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be 20 minutes. It can be 35. And then once you get through those 4 or 5 folds, stop. And then let it proof without touching it. And then we'll come back. Our timing should hopefully be good. But obviously, if you feel like it's proofed before I'm back, because you're warmer, or you use warmer water, we're not going to be exactly the same. Do what you need to do. Try to shape it. The other video's up, but hopefully we'll be ready together and we can shape it together. You can see that process. But by all means, you're in charge of your bread. So good luck.